this is not really a very good setup. I'm just kind of throwing this together. But I got the 400 Mini, got it set up. Pretty slick, pretty easy to do. I'm not going to go over the particulars. Everybody else has done breakdowns on the hardware. Except to say that I'm running an old VGA monitor here. I thought maybe it would run in 4.3, and it will work, but it'll be a little squeezed and stuff, because it really is expecting a 16 by 9 1280 by 720p monitor. This is like 1024 by 720 or something like that, so it's a little squishy, but it works well enough for what I'm doing here. And in the games it's not so bad, because you can set it to pixel perfect and it tends to stretch it out enough to make it look about the right proportions. Anyway, that's my unique setup. When you hear sound later on, by the way, there'll be some sound I'll turn up here. I'm just running these little Amazon speakers that are about $20 or $25, I think maybe 20 bucks or so. These are actually pretty good. They're very heavy, they got a good feel to them, and they have a USB connection for power, and I guess you could use them as USB, but they also have a 3.5mm jack, which I wanted just for maximum flexibility. And I'm running, and you can't really see it because I don't think I can lift it up in front of the camera. Well, maybe I can get it there. Running a VGA to HDMI adapter, got for about $6 on Amazon, that has a 3.5mm jack. This does work. The sound comes through here and goes out the jack. So this all works with the Mini. Anyway, in case you're using some kind of more of a retro setup or want to use older monitors or something that don't have HDMI, this is an option, but I would get something with the sound option, with a separate output like that. Okay, so now I'm not going to go over playing games and stuff. Everybody's done that. The one thing I haven't seen so far is anyone doing anything about the disk images. So that's what we're going to tackle. There's a way to set this up. I'll put a link in the description of a video of a guy that went through setting up the USB stick. There's a couple steps. Essentially, you have to basically go into disk. You take a modern thumb drive, go to disk part, reset it or whatever to MBR format it standard FAT32, standard default cluster size, and then you put it in the Mini before you do anything with it, and let the Mini it'll put a couple files on there, and then when the Mini's done with that, you can take it out, put it in your PC or whatever computer you got, and then you can start copying folders, files, and everything else to it, and you can go back and forth. So I've already done a couple of things in here. This is a file that it puts on. The Mini puts this file on. There's another file you can't see here because it's a configuration file. When you put it in your computer, you'll see. We're going to go with the games. And so it'll deal with disk images directly, so you could just go. Let's see if I can actually get in here. Maybe I can't. Oh, I didn't put anything in there. Okay. So let's try something like Ultima 3. So the way this works is, this is not an image file. This is a playlist. There's two ways to do it on this Mini, and the playlist method is probably going to be the easiest, because the one other method you can only add like internally, that without using a playlist, you can just go find an image, and you kind of add it to the internal list on the Mini, but you can only do 3 disks. If you do a playlist, 2 things happen. 1, you can use more disks, and 2, you have to, and I'll show this when I switch over, and I'll do another part of the video here where we go on the PC and we'll show the actual files. But I'll describe it here. But the playlist, then you also can sequence the playlist, because you can only cycle. You can't just pick a disc like up or down a list. You basically just go to the next disc in the list sequentially, and then it loops around as you're selecting discs to use. So this one has 2 discs. So in this file, which is it's just like a playlist file for VLC or any other MP3 playlist. It's actually literally called m.m3u, just like any other playlist file. It's just text. I'll go over the particulars of how to do, because you could do paths like this within, but in this folder, which you can't see, I actually have this file, which is the playlist, and there are 2 image files. And of course, because there's a playlist, it's hiding the image files. So the image file names are contained within this playlist. I did it this way, and I'll explain a little bit more later about that, because it was going to be easier for me, and I just would rather have it this way, where the playlists are within the same folder as the image files. And doing it that way, you don't need any paths. You only need the file names. But you can do it where you could put this Ultima 3 playlist up here at the games or RPG level, outside of this folder, and have the path point to Ultima 3 / file name if you want. You can do it either way. I did it so that they're all self-contained in that way, so there's not playlists in one place and the images in another. Plus, it makes the file names in here, you just only need the file names. So anyway, so we go here as we select the game, and then you can see it says home to start the game. And you've probably seen this, but the joystick, there's a menu button and a home button. You just have to kind of know where they are, and they do different things. I'm going to check my game settings. Okay, I'm going to do 130XE. It doesn't really need it, but that should all be good. Okay, and very cleverly, again, you've probably seen this, but the actual ring, these are actually buttons. It's like a four-way hat button, which I think is actually a pretty clever way to let you do menus and such. This is typically the back button. That's called the top button. So you actually press these. That's pretty cool. It's a very clever, integrated way of doing it without having a lot of extra buttons on the thing. Anyway, so once you've got that selected, you can, once you got this menu down here, you can say Start Game, so we hit the home button. And I'm going to turn the volume up here. Now, the keyboard, I'm using a USB keyboard because the joystick isn't really going to work with this game. And the keyboard isn't really going to work that well either right now. This is not really a demo of the game. It's just kind of showing you that you can load, change the discs and stuff. Because the keyboard is not laid out, the way it reads the keyboard, the USB keyboard is not, it doesn't do any translating for you. So you have to know what buttons are what on an Atari keyboard equivalent, except for a few things like some function keys for start and select and stuff, which are mapped. And there probably is a mapping thing, I haven't gotten to that yet, where you can map certain keys a different way. So the arrow keys on the keyboard here do not actually correspond to movement within the game, or arrow keys on the Atari, or at least the ones that don't read it that way. Anyway, I'm not really going to play the game very much. See, it's insert scenario discs. Now what we do is, here's the trick. You're going to press the home button. While holding that down, you're going to press the down button here. So this is a little tricky. Hopefully you can see. I don't have a lot of light here. So we hold the home button, and then we hit down, and you can see it says 2 of 2. And each time you press that, it'll go down, down, down the list to the next one, and then wrap around when it gets to the bottom. So now we should be, you have to remember it. It's a little cumbersome, but it's simple and it works. Insert scenario disk. I don't know if I hit space or key, enter key. I guess space works. Okay, space key. And then we hit J for journey onward in this particular case. And now we're in the game. But you can see I got to figure out movement. That's climb. I'm not sure what the arrow keys are on the on the keyboard equivalent for the Atari. There's some overlays you can get if you wanted to use a regular keyboard. Let me turn that down just it's a little loud. But you see on these speakers, I'll turn up a little bit. It's not bad for retro gaming. These are pretty good little speakers for retro gaming, that's for sure. I can do, ironically, control down arrow moves them north, go figure. But I can at least attack, so we'll just do a little thing here. Attack, north. And so on and so forth. So this is how you can use multi-disc games. Some of them get complicated. I would probably recommend, there's a few games that, especially role-playing games, you're going to do, it's going to want you to make discs, make a player disc or whatever. Wizard's Crown, which is a favorite of a couple friends of mine, and it actually requires 3 discs to be created. So anything like that, or even before you really play on here, unless you want a true full retro experience, I would probably recommend making those discs on an emulator like an Altera or something to get that taken care of without messing around on here, because this is not really quite a full system. Well, you could, but it's a little cumbersome that way. Now, real quick, before we run out of battery here, hopefully everyone got some battery. As you'll see, no color artifacting. That is a big disappointment. I hadn't seen anyone talk about this. I saw all these games people demoed. I'm pretty sure I saw games that I thought were running in artifact mode, but I guess not. Or there's some other way to do it. There's nothing in the menu options or in the display options for it. I have to say this is a pretty big disappointment, considering that color artifacting had been figured out, like a decade ago, and has been around for a long time. So I don't know why it doesn't have that as a capability here, unless there's some other thing or some other setting or some other thing I don't know, but I can't find any information about that. So there's very little information right now on things like that and more esoteric things. I would hope, and if the creators of this box, which is a really wonderful little box otherwise, it's really cool, if they're listening or reading, watching this kind of stuff, you know, please make that some kind of an update. That's going to be a real stopping point for games like this. Because as you can see, you can actually play multi-disc role-playing games. And this is a big thing for, you know, for something like this. This is a cool, I'm not sure how practical it is because you need a keyboard. You'd have to deal with that. But because this system is kind of, it seems like the system is kind of designed more for, you know, doing joystick arcade games. But it is capable of this. And you really want to see it realized as much as possible if it can do things like this. So since this all works, well, let's try to get it working properly. Let's try to get the color artifacting tables. There's color tables and stuff in there for, you know, if the background color and the foreground color are a certain color, then the artifacting is X. And there's ways to adjust that. Altera, again, had this worked out years ago. And they even have some profiles for that and stuff where you can make adjustments in case, you know, green and blue are off. You can shift the color hue and stuff like that to get them to look right. And more options would be nice too for that. Maybe a little bit more of a, because some of the colors, while they look pretty good in here, some of the colors are a little flat. This looks great, but the colors in the game sometimes look a little flat. Let me give an example. I don't know. I don't want to do a bunch of game stuff here, but it's not bad, but that should be much more of a brighter orange, or even a, well, it's not really a red, it's probably an orange. The original Atari did not do red very well. Pure reds, it was very dark. The reds were very dark. So people tended to use more of an orange or an orange red because it was brighter and more brilliant. So you did not really have a good red on the original system. They all tended to be muddy and dark. I don't know why. When I was developing a role-playing type game, which I'm working on, I ran into that too. I wanted to use red. Couldn't get a good red that looked bright red, so I went with a bright orange. So anyway, but you can see it looks good. And again, this monitor it's an older monitor, so maybe that's just my thing. So, but some color options would be nice to be able to push or pull down the colors as an option somewhere along the way would be not a bad thing. And I'm not even trying here. Ah! Wow, that's as good as I've ever done on Millipede, and I'm not even trying. Joystick works pretty good. People say it's stiff, but it's not bad. And I'd rather have it be a little stiff to start with than be loose and get looser. But this is pretty decent. I mean, I can control it really well. I can actually start and stop where I want, and it doesn't feel overly... the button is got a nice tactile feel. Again, I'm not trying to do a review of the system hardware here, but anyway, it works pretty good. So anyway, that's what I had and I want to kind of comment on, but in particular having to do with the artifacting mode and the multi-disc stuff. Those are the two things that were, for me, the kind of primary thing I wanted to see something like this do. Because, I mean, I could do the emulation on the computer, but this is more fun, you know, and I'd really love to play something like this this way, but I really need the artifacting, and at least it has the multi-disc support, so you can do that. All right, so the next part of this video will have a little bit of I'll do a thing on the computer where it just shows the files and how to set the files. Pretty easy. Okay, and following on from the previous portion, how to set up the playlists. You can modify this however you would like. I'm just going to do it a very straightforward way, simple way, just so the steps are clear. You're going to get yourself whatever thumb drive you want to use, up to 32 gigs. I think you can't do it bigger than 32, although that's still a lot. I happen to have a 32. That's what this one was. So you go to disk. You go to command prompt with administrator. You go to disk part. Find the drive. Make absolutely sure, of course, you know you've got the right drive in question. This is 30 gigs, as you can see. I've already done this, but you'll go in here and you'll basically, I think you have to clear the drive first. So delete all partitions is probably the best way to do it, so that it's just unallocated space. And then go in here for disk 7, in my case, whatever your disk is for that one. You would then do a convert. You do select it. You do I'm not going to show you all the commands here, but essentially it's select disk 7. Then once you've selected it and you're actually on the right disk, you do convert MBR, and that'll convert it to an MBR from whatever it was before. They usually come, if you buy them from the store or wherever, they're usually GPT or something like that, or some other format. But we need an MBR setup. Then once that's done, you can go ahead and format it just like normal formatting. Just make sure you format it as FAT32 and with default allocation size, give it whatever name you want. Standard formatting should work there. Then, before you do any of this stuff you see here, take that drive, put it in the Mini, turn it on, wait a few seconds after you, well, you can put it in after you turn it on, but wait until the activity on the drive sees the drive and sets it up. It'll put some files on there. You can see there's, it puts this basic, which you saw in the other video, and then a configuration file, which is invisible. Once it's got these established, then you can go ahead and make folders and do whatever you want from there for organizing your, the drive. So then what you do is you go and make a folder for whichever game or whatever, multi-disc thing is in question. Put the discs in there. Make sure you know which order you want the discs to go in. This configuration file was created by the Mini, so we don't need to worry about that. Make yourself a text file, which is what this is. And if it's in the same folder, then you just need the file names of the disk images, since the path is already here. These are in the same folder. They're in the same path. But if you want to put this like up here or in any folder above, you need to replicate the path from there down. So if you put this in the games folder, you need, in front of this, you would then need RPG, sorry. You need RPG /, not backslash, and then, if I could spell right, Ultima 3 /, or whatever your path is from that folder down to the actual disk image. This is why I did it this way, so I don't have to worry about trying to figure out paths. This works just as well to put them in here, because when you pull it up on the Mini, as you saw, you just get this file anyway. Once that file is, you've got the, oh, and another important thing, put these in the sequence, put them in a sequence you're going to remember, because you can only go down the list, and then it loops around as you're selecting disks within the Mini. So make sure they're sequenced the way you want, in some manner. It's pretty easy with 2 or 3 discs, but if there's multiple discs, like Wizard's Crown role-playing game is going to have like 7 discs or something like that, because you're going to end up with like 4 discs. There's like 2 discs for the program, 2 discs for the dungeons, and then 3 discs for your player, or something weird like that. So you're going to end up with multiple discs, and a few others are probably like that as well that have multiple discs. So get them in a sequence that you're going to remember, because you can't see the file name on the Mini. It just says 2 of 5, 3 of 5, or 2 of 4. It doesn't tell you, so you want to know the positioning in the list. And then that's it. From there, you just save that. And I do it this way, but you can, whichever way you want to do it to edit the file. Make sure you have an M3U extension. And then that's it. You set them up that way, plug it in the Mini, and off you go. And that will then see all of the disks in here. And this gets around the built-in limitation of the Mini that has, there's another way you can do it, where you can more directly add these disks. You could just have the image files here and just add the disks within the Mini, within its own system, but it only handles 3 disks. So for small stuff, that's probably fine, but it's going to be probably easier to set things up here on a PC or a Mac or whatever on this side of things than to mess with it on the Mini. And then you just use the M3U file, and you should only, well, you might, I had one instance where I saw the M3U file and another file, and I'm not sure why it showed any of these files when they're in the M3U, but anyway. But for the most part, you should just see this file. If you see more than one, you should see something like this file, and then maybe one of this something with this kind of file name. It might show this file for some reason, and if it does, then just make sure you know or name your M3U file something unique enough that you can tell it apart from, like, don't name it Ultima 3A, because then it might get confused with the disk if it were to show the name of the disk as well. You want to have this be something unique enough that you can find it if for some reason it shows you more than just that. Occasionally it does. But other than that, that's it. And like I said, aside from the artifacting thing, which is a huge letdown, this is serviceable enough. I would love to see a proper menu to let you select the disks by name. The same procedure maybe, or even just show the name when you hold the home button, hit down. That might be a good way to do it, is that instead of just saying 2 of 2, it actually shows the file name of the disk. That's the next one in the list. That would make it a lot easier because the whole moving sequentially is not really a big deal, because how many disks are you realistically going to have in one of these scenarios? It's 2, 3, 4 disks maybe. You're not going to really be juggling 10 disks. You could, I suppose, if you want to make like a mass, all arcade games and actually do the disk images like this, so you flip between them or something like that. But even then, same thing. If you did something like that, having the name of the disk would be great. Plus, I believe these names could be whatever. I don't think these names don't have to adhere to, the 8.3 format, because this is all outside of the emulator. This is all within the Mini's operating system itself, not the emulated Atari. You don't really have to. You can name these whatever you want, so you can get more descriptive on the names. And then if they do provide an option to see the names of the discs, you can have a lot better ability to identify them. That'd be my suggestion anyway. But the biggest one is, yeah, get that color artifacting working, because that's going to be so crucial for so many things, and especially role-playing games, which would be one of the more fun things to play on this. Anyway, that's all for now. Hope it helps.